Hey guys, welcome to 24 Chambers of Film. Nathan here. And today we are going to be talking about two movies that get compared a lot. And I'm asking the question, which one is better? American Me or Blood In, Blood Out? Now, I recently had that question asked to me and I really didn't know how to answer. My cousin called me very serious and goes, "Hey man, I got a question for you." And I said, "Oh, what is it?" He goes, "American Me or Blood In, Blood Out?" And that got me thinking, well, which one's better? Typically watch them like once a year. American Me I own, and I I have it on Fandango. Owned it for a few years now. Blood and Blood Out is a lot harder to get your hands on unless you're talking about a physical copy. There is a very good version that's uploaded to YouTube, which is how I had been watching it. But then I found out a few months ago that it was on Hulu, and I watched it on Hulu, and it looked great. And then Hulu took it off. So finding Blood and Blood Out, if you haven't seen this, is going to be a little bit more challenging. If that good version isn't up on YouTube, American Me you can pretty much get anywhere. So I really started thinking about which one was better, and these movies both have to do with something very similar, which is the Mexican mafia or Mexican prison gangs. However, the stories are told in two completely different ways. So, starting off with American Me, it is directed and stars Edward James Olmos. He stars as Santana, who is the one of the founders. Montoya Santana is one of the founders of the La M in the movie. It's called La M, which is their version of the Mexican Mafia. Him, along with William Forsythe, who plays his friend JD, and then another friend, Mundo, start La M in prison. Now, one thing I can say about American Me, it takes a lot more serious undertone. Like it almost doesn't seem like it's just a movie for entertainment value. It seems like it's a movie that's made to educate. And I think this potentially could be one of the reasons that this movie actually led to some issues with uh, consultants on the film being murdered, as well as a hit being placed on Edward James Olmos' head because of how they portrayed the Mexican mafia in this movie. Because his character is based on one of the founders, Rudy Cadena, and then William Forsythe's character is based on Joe Pegleg Morgan, who was a white member of the Mexican Mafia. And for those of you who know who William Forsythe is, he's a white guy. So JD is a white guy, and the character is 100% based on him. There is no hiding that. As far as the events, like the movie doesn't say at any point based on a true story or anything like that, but apparently they weren't happy of how they were portrayed. For example, one of the things was in the movie when Montoya Santana, which is Edward James Olmos' character, goes to a juvenile facility, he gets taken advantage of there, assaulted, and that did not make the Mexican mafia happy because essentially they're saying that this happened to one of their founders. And this movie is about how they build up the Laeme, right? They're the equivalent of the Mexican mafia in the movie. They build them up to this strong, powerful um, entity that controls things outside of prison. Now, on the flip side, for Blood and Blood Out, this movie is more about in my opinion, it's more about family and how family deals with issues and how family relationships are tested. That's probably the best way to put it. So American Me came out in 1992. Blood and Blood Out came out in 1993. Now, apparently, Edward James Olmos was offered an opportunity to work on Blood and Blood Out, but there was they butted heads on ideas, and he ended up not doing it. So I was actually trying to find the answer if Edward James Olmos decided to do American Me based on that experience of not liking the way Blood and Blood Out was going, and then decided to do his own thing. Because apparently, Blood and Blood Out had been in production or conceptualized in the early '80s. It just didn't get made till way later, and actually was made, but the delay got released, and that's why it ended up coming out a year after American Me, 1993. So Blood and Blood Out said it's a family movie. So the movie has to do with three cousins, or two brothers and one cousin. The main character, I would say, in this movie, instead of it really playing out through the eyes of like in American Me, one of the Santana, who is Edward James Olmos, and the movie has a very similar cast because it has a white guy who is hanging out with the Mexicans, the Latinos, and that is Damien Chapa's character Miklo. He is the cousin of Benjamin Pratt's character Paco and Jesse Borrego's character Cruz. Cruz and Paco are brothers, and Miklo is their cousin who comes to live with his mom in the Mexican barrio hood. And when they're there, they are part of, well, not Miklo, but Cruz and Paco are part of the Vatos Locos. And Miklo wants to join. At one point, Cruz is injured by a rival gang. And so then Miklo and Paco and some of the other guys, they go to get revenge. And Miklo ends up killing the rival gang member, Spider. And as they're trying to get away, they get into a car accident and they're both arrested. And that's where their paths diverge. Miklo gets into prison while Paco is given an opportunity to join the military. So he joins to avoid prison time. And in prison, Miklo kind of sees how prison politics are, right? The beef that he has with street gangs outside doesn't carry in prison because in prison you have to go by your race. So in this movie, they're not starting anything. The Mexican Mafia, which in this movie is called La Onda, is already established. And it's him trying to join them because at first he's looked at as an outsider because he is white. And so he eventually earns their trust and then joins them, and they are actually led by another someone completely different named Montana. And Montana is the one thing that the movies have very similar is that in American Me, Santana is the main guy, is the main leader, who you call the main leader, and then in Blood and Blood Out, you have Montana, and they both kind of they realize that they need to change their ways because of the influence they have, right? Rather than wreak havoc on the world, they could use their powers for good. Now, I would say that to draw a comparison, the two white characters, JD in American Me and Miklo in Blood and Blood Out, are somewhat similar because in both movies they are part of the power struggle that ensues between the original leaders of, for example, La M, which is Santana, and La Onda, which is Montoya. Now, in both movies, it established that their council, that there is not like a true leader, but there is someone who presides over everyone, but it all comes down to votes. So in Blood and Blood Out, what happens is, Miklo works his way up the ranks, and then he gets released, and some point he starts getting fed up with just how shitty things are going. So he decides to go back to his life of crime, and he ends up getting shot by Benjamin Pratt during a botched robbery. So his cousin shoots him, and he holds that hatred in his heart. So meanwhile, in prison, there's just, all the prison politics going on in both families. There's the Black Guerrilla family, which I believe in both. It's called the Black Guerrilla Army. And then there's the Aryan Brotherhood, which is the Aryan Vanguard or the AVers in the movies. I want to say in both of them, it's the Aryan Vanguard. So they're dealing with all these other things that are going on in prison. And in America, in Me, they basically what happens is that Santana's character decides that he ends up getting out of prison, gets sent back to prison, not by his fault, but because of a mistake of someone he was with. You've probably seen the movie Next Friday, and in Next Friday, there's a part where Little Joker is like, "Don't look at me, puppet. Don't look at me," right? Like as a joke. That's a play on, or that's basically making fun of a American Me, where the character that sends Santana, Edward James Olmos, back to prison by accident, his name is Little Puppet, and they have his brother kill him, and his brother's puppet. So when he's killing him, he's like choking him with a wire, and he looks up and he's like, "Don't look at me, little puppet. Don't look at me." So that's kind of where that comes from, or not kind of. That is where that comes from. So anyway, back to Santana's character. He doesn't want to get revenge. He's kind of had a change of heart in how they're doing things. But JD, William Forsythe's character, is like, no, we're gonna continue strong, and we are going to push forward to make La M, their Mexican Mafia, stronger and control everything. So Santana, he's back in prison, not by his own mistake, but because of Little Puppet, and but he doesn't want to continue to push drugs and things like that. So his machine, La M, turns on him and ends up killing him in prison because they can't show that they're weak, and JD, Mundo, everyone else basically turns on him because he didn't want to continue to do what they were there to do. In Blood In Blood Out, Miklo's character, or Damien Chapa's character, Miklo, basically uses Paco, Benjamin Pratt's character, to basically take care of Montoya, who is the leader of La Onda, or their equivalent of the Mexican Mafia in the movie, because again he wants to make changes, and everyone else thinks that they're looking weak. So they don't actually kill Montoya; they have him set up to be killed, and Damien Chapa, Miklo actually ends up being like a pretty conniving mastermind in this whole concept, and ends up, along with several other characters, turning on Montoya. And then, in the subplot, part of the story that takes a backseat is the fact that Cruz, which is Paco, Benjamin Pratt's brother, you know, is addicted to drugs because of his injury that he suffered early on, where Miklo ended up killing the guy for that. And that's like a whole subplot of his struggles in life and his detachment from his family, because his brother, their little brother, ends up dying because of an overdose. So it has a whole another story, not just the main story about the prison gangs in La M, or La Onda, or the Mexican Mafia, however you want to call it. So both movies cover stuff, but that is similar, but they're done so in such a different way that it's almost not fair to compare them, because they really have one thing, which is the Mexican Mafia, or the Mexican prison gang um, concept, but they go in completely different directions on how it works. And to me, American Me is more serious, more educational. Like, if you see it, you're like, "Oh shit, this is fucking real." And I think that, like I mentioned before, that's one of the issues that they had, that the way everything was portrayed, the actual members of the Mexican Mafia were like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, you're making us look, a certain way, and basically you're taking liberties with things." And even though it's not based on a true story, right? People are still going to assume. Where I think if you watch Blood and Blood Out, it's for entertainment value. I don't think I ever watched Blood and Blood Out and said, "Oh man, this is anything that happened here is 100% real." It reminds me a lot of like a Dances with Wolves. It's like a cholo dances with wolves, I guess is the best way to put it. Um, Not only because of how long it is, but because of just the way it's almost like it's not intentionally trying to be funny, but there's just some things that you can't help but laugh at, but they don't affect the movie in a negative way. You know, there's some great one-liners in Blood and Blood Out that are entertaining. Give me some of that chon chon.
You white bitch, give me some chon chon.
Things like that are pretty funny. And I think Blood and Blood Out, if we were to show it to a massive audience who'd never seen it before, I think they would appreciate, or they would like Blood and Blood Out more, because I think it's just more palatable. Like I said, because it doesn't come out as gritty, as dark as American Me. American Me is just like, it's gritty. It's a very well made movie. Edward James almost did a good job. Now, when it comes to American Me, I'm not going to talk about all the outside issues, because as I mentioned, that had a lot of stuff that happened outside of it. While Blood and Blood Out really didn't have that, and it's almost like American Me stood in front of Blood and Blood Out, took all the criticism from the Mexican Mafia and the people involved with it because they saw it. All the other one was more like, oh, that's a movie, that's all in good, fun. But this one is being something serious. So, like I said, two completely different experiences. Now, as far as which one's better, which one should first off, you should watch both of them. I think they're both good movies. Um, Blood and Blood Out, I think is just a little bit like you can watch it, you can have a good time, and it's it's just a little bit when I say softer, I don't mean softer like in weak, I just mean it's easier to digest, where even though things happen, it's like, it's still funny, there's still some comedy where everything is pretty gritty in American. If you wanna scare your kid about and tell them, "Oh, this is what prison's like," you show them American Me, you don't show them Blood In, Blood Out, you know? Because, again, it just seems a lot more lighthearted in Blood In, Blood Out, not in a bad way, it just does. They're both very good movies. If I had to choose one and the other one had to just completely be erased from the map, I would probably pick Blood In, Blood Out simply because, like I said, the entertainment value. I think I would rather just be entertained and watch it longer. Also, because it's a lot harder to get a hold of, like unless you're actually getting like a physical like VHS DVD copy. It's not that easy to come across. Where American Me's a lot easier. But yeah, I just think I prefer the entertainment value of Blood In, Blood Out. Not to say that American Me is not entertaining, but it's a different kind of entertainment, and I prefer the Blood In, Blood Out movie. And I mean, at the end of the day, they were both movies that were made and they didn't really perform well at the box office when they came out. They kind of hit their stride later on in life in VHS and stuff. I mean, Blood and Blood Out, $35 million budget, and only made like $5 million at the box office. American Me, I think, was a lot closer to breaking even at the box office. It was something like $14 million budget, made about 14 million. You're talking about American Me, which is like 2 hours, as opposed to Blood and Blood Out, which is 3 hours. So there, Blood and Blood is a saga, a epic tale of family and how family can fall apart, but also family can mend and stick together. While American Me is strictly about the prison gangs and the evolution and how the machine turns against one of its creators. Really, that's how that goes. So again, again, it's a tough one. And when I say I'm picking Blood and Blood Out over American Me, it's not a resounding yes. It's way better. It's just if I was forced to pick, that's what I would pick. So if you've seen American Me and Blood and Blood Out, let me know which one you guys prefer, which one you think is better. Again, to me, they're somewhat different movies. I don't think the comparison is 100% fair, other than they both have to do with Mexican prison gangs at some point in the movie, right? Where one of them it's really the primary focus, and with the other one, it's a layer of more layers in the movie. But let me know. I'd love to hear what you guys think about this, because again, this is one of those movies that I didn't even think of comparing them until I was posed with the question, and I feel like yeah, I'm curious what people say: American Me or Blood In, Blood Out. Let me know in the comments. Love to hear what you guys have to say. Thanks for watching, guys. It's Nathan from 24 Chambers of Film. And once again, make sure to let me know in the comments: American Me or Blood In, Blood Out.